Hi there, kiddos. Miss Hill back at you with another Ed Puzzle lesson. Today, we are going to look at some Unit 2 vocabulary that you're going to see in the story today. So you're going to add these terms to your notebook where we've already added some vocabulary terms. And remember, when we add them, what you're going to do is you're going to write the word, and then you're going to draw a little symbol that reminds you what that word means, and then you're going to use it in a sentence to show me you actually know what it means. Okay, so we are going to start with this term character trait, which goes back to what we were talking about yesterday. A character trait is something that is part of someone's personality. So when we look at this picture over here, where sometimes we have outside physical traits, we're thinking more about the inside, the personality traits, the things that we notice that are revealed by a character's thoughts and words, what they do or say or think. So remember, character traits are things like honesty, bravery, sneakiness. That could be a character trait. So my sentence down here is one common character trait for heroes in a story is bravery. So what you're going to do is you're going to pause and you're going to add this word to your vocabulary notebook. And then right next to it, you're going to draw a little symbol, and then you're going to use it in a sentence. And if you're struggling to get a good symbol for this one, maybe something like this, where you've got the person, but then there's also these happy and sad masks above their head to kind of show that they could be any of those things. So go ahead and add your entry for character trait. Now that you've got your entry, I just want to dig into this idea a little more. These are all character traits. Being helpful, friendly, compassionate could all fall under being nice. Mean could include things like cruel, hateful, unkind. So these are synonyms for these different words, but the main word is at the top. So things like happy, sad, funny, tricky, brave, smart, mad, scared, thankful, clumsy, active, shy, talkative. So we can really branch out a lot with these character traits. Our second term today is communicate. You all know how to communicate. And this is to talk or send information to another person. But looking at our picture here, we have a lot of ways we can communicate with people. We can communicate with our facial expressions. You all communicate with me every morning with your emoji check-in. Sometimes people have to communicate with sign language. We can communicate with emails, pictures, speaking. People often communicate through email. So go ahead and do your entry for communicate. If you're having trouble coming up with a symbol, that could be a good one. Or really, you could use any of these symbols that are over here too, or maybe you have one in mind. I can't wait to check it out. Our next term after communicate is relationships. So these are the bonds or connections that people have together. So relationships can be just because you have to work together. Relationships can be because you want to be friends. We all know about romantic relationships. So there's all different kinds of relationships. Our sentence that goes with this one is, she has good relationships with other students in the class. So if you need a good symbol for this one, I like the idea of the puzzle piece, the puzzle pieces that fit together to make good relationships. But we could also do like just the hands, shaking hands. That's a good one too. So go ahead and do your own entry for relationships in your notebook. Ooh, next is literature. One of my favorite words because it includes written stories or fiction. These are those imaginary, amazing stories that take us to different worlds. So I love this picture showing the world inside the book. And our sentence says, we will read lots of literature in ELA class. When you're thinking about your sentence for this one, make sure in your sentence I can tell that you're meaning fiction instead of nonfiction. Maybe use an example in your sentence of what could be a literature story. It's just a fancy word for fiction. So go ahead and make your entry for literature. Next, these last two words are words we're going to actually see in the story today. This first one is the word stewing. So when someone is stewing, that's when they're thinking about something that angers or worries them. Our example sentence is, the player was stewing after he missed the shot. I'm sure you all have experienced that before, where you're just kind of mad at yourself for making a mistake. This guy in the picture is stewing about some silly mistake he made instead of just moving on. So go ahead and put in your entry for stewing. Our last vocabulary word is this one, rambled. I think you all know what this is. It's when someone is talking for a long time without having a clear point. Our sentence for this one is, I rambled on about cooking, which is my favorite hobby. And then our picture is just this girl going blah, 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 blah. So this is just when people are just sort of talking with no end in sight. They're kind of rambling. So go ahead and do your entry for rambled. Make sure and give me that good symbol and sentence. Next, we're going to think about making inferences. So I want to show you a little anchor chart that I created to help us make some inferences. There we go. And we really have been doing this forever. You all have probably been making inferences since you were tiny children. But I want to give you some reminders. When we make inferences, we must think about the info that the author is sharing in the text. That's pretty obvious. The author is going to give us the most important information. But then you also have to think about the info the author isn't directly sharing. Maybe he's giving you some clues and giving you the chance to figure something out on your own. We also call this reading between the lines. Okay, so not everything is going to be stated directly. Some stuff you're going to have to figure out. You can use your background knowledge to figure out what the author is trying to say. Maybe you've been in a similar situation and you can pull from your background knowledge to figure something out. And then finally, you're just going to make a conclusion based on what you've read in the text and what you've combined with your background knowledge. So it ends up being an addition equation. Text info plus your background knowledge leads us to making these good inferences. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you kind of what that looks like within the text. So this is our story that we're reading today. It's called The Drive Down, and it's from a book called As Brave as You by Jason Reynolds. He's the same one that wrote the track series that I read to you all last week. So before I even start reading this, I can be making some inferences just based on the title. So it says The Drive Down, and I've got this picture here of some boys. It looks like in a car, in the back seat of a car. And when I think about the drive down, the title to me suggests that they're driving to a specific place. They know where they're going. And even though the author hasn't directly stated anything yet, I know from my background knowledge that when I've been on road trips, it's usually to go on vacation or to visit a family member. So I'm guessing that that's what is going on here too, but I don't know if my inference is correct until I read the text. So let's check this out together. I want you all to read along with me as we look at this. This first part says, North Hill, Virginia was country, like country. And Jeannie and Ernie were staying there in a small white house on the top of the hill, Grandma and Grandpa's house, for a month, like 30 whole days. So already, even though this is a very short paragraph, I've already gotten some good info. Like I just found out the names of my characters, who are Jeannie and Ernie. says the boys had arrived 2 nights earlier after a long, cramped ride in the back of their dad's old Honda. Cramped at least for Jeannie, because Ernie, in a cheeseburger coma, had stretched out on the back seat as if it were his own personal couch, forcing Jeannie to be smushed against the window for most of the trip. So, what does that tell us about Ernie? Okay, Ernie has stretched out, taken up most of the back seat. What does that tell us about him? Answer in this next question. Jeannie had thought about playing Pete and Repeat by mimicking Ernie's nasty snores, but when he realized it wouldn't matter because Ernie wasn't awake to get annoyed by it anyway. And that was the whole point of that game. Ooh, what does that tell us about Jeannie? So, to take his mind off the discomfort of being trapped under Ernie's leg, stewing in the thick silence between his folks, who had managed to not talk to each other for the past 4 hours, Jeannie flipped through the pages of his notebook, where he kept his best questions. Some had already been answered, and some were still mysteries. He landed on one that he had totally forgotten about, number 389. Do honey badgers eat honey? Then tried telling his parents about how he'd read on the internet that honey badgers actually do eat honey and how many of them have been stung to death by bees because they wanted honey from the hive so bad. The toughest, craziest animal ever. They're like weasels or something, but tougher. Know what I'm saying? Like they're small, but they ain't scared to get busy. Even on lions, Jeannie had rambled. The fact that his parents had neither asked him about honey badgers or even knew why he cared about them in the first place never stopped him from offering up random info at random times. That was sort of his thing. He was different from Ernie in that way. Jeannie was the kind of kid who kept a jacked up notebook and a pen in his pocket just so he could jot down interesting things whenever they came. The point was to keep a list, a numbered list, because to Jeannie, the more questions you had, the more answers you could find. And the more answers you found, the more you knew. And the more you knew, the less you made mistakes. Jeannie wasn't about mistakes. Ernie, on the other hand, was the kind of kid who wore sunglasses 24/7 just to make sure everybody knew he was cool. And to him, the biggest mistake anyone could make was not to be. That and not being able to defend yourself. As a matter of fact, one of the only times Ernie didn't wear his shades was whenever he was doing karate, which he had been learning since he was 7. Jeannie liked to build model cars. So that's where we're going to stop. Hopefully you got to make some good inferences. Next, you're going to go into deer time, and you're actually going to make an inference about one of the characters in your deer book today. I can't wait to check that out. Good job today. Talk to you soon. Bye.